Dog barks non-stop in the barn. When the rancher goes to check, his future changes forever. Robert Johnson woke up startled by the desperate barks of Duke coming from the barn. The clock read 3:15 in the morning, and in 40 years of tending to that ranch in rural Montana, he had never seen his German Shepherd act like that. The dog barked incessantly, a sound unlike his usual alerts for intruders or wild animals. It was something more urgent, almost as if he were calling for help. Robert hurriedly pulled on his boots and grabbed the old flashlight from the nightstand. The night was unusually cold for October, and a light drizzle wet his face as he crossed the yard toward the barn. Duke ran back and forth at the entrance, sniffing at something that had him extremely agitated. "What's wrong, Duke? What's in there?" Robert murmured, adjusting his hat. When he pushed open the creaky barn door, the flashlight revealed something that made his heart clench. There, on a pile of golden hay, lay a child fast asleep. A boy no older than 6, clutching a worn and dirty rag doll. The child's clothes were torn and grimy. His small feet were bare and bruised. His angelic face contrasted with the dirt covering his arms and legs. Duke approached slowly, sniffing the boy carefully, as if sensing the delicacy of the situation. Robert stood frozen for a few seconds. He had lived alone on that ranch for 12 years, ever since his wife Mary had passed. 12 years of silence, of lonely routines, of conversations only with Duke and the few neighbors who still visited. "Good Lord," he whispered, moving closer so as not to startle the child. The boy breathed steadily, exhausted. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days, his frame thin and pale. Robert knelt down and, very gently, covered him with an old blanket he kept in the barn for the coldest nights. He decided to wait until morning. He didn't want to wake the boy abruptly, and he also needed to think about what to do. How had the child gotten there? His ranch was 15 miles from the nearest town, Big Rock, and there were no neighboring houses within 5 miles. He sat in an old chair and watched the boy sleep. Duke lay beside the hay pile like a silent guardian. The hours passed slowly, and Robert found himself remembering distant times when he and Mary had dreamed of having children. When the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the barn's cracks, the boy stirred. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking in confusion. When he saw Robert sitting there, he jumped in fright and shrank against the wooden wall. "Easy there, son. I won't hurt you," Robert said softly, raising his hands in peace. "My name's Robert. How'd you end up here?" The boy stared at him with wide eyes, clutching the doll to his chest. His messy brown hair and bright green eyes shone with fear and exhaustion. I got lost," he whispered in a weak, hoarse voice. "What's your name, son?" "Jack," he answered after a pause, "but everyone calls me Little Jack." "Little Jack, are you hungry? Come with me. I'll fix you some breakfast." The boy hesitated, glancing at Duke, who wagged his tail slowly, trying to show he was friendly. "The dog won't hurt me. Duke's a good boy. He's the one who told me you were here. I think he wanted to help you." Slowly, Little Jack stood up. He was even smaller than Robert had guessed, too thin for his age. He followed the rancher to the house, keeping his distance, the doll tight in his arms. The farmhouse kitchen was simple but cozy. Robert made warm milk, scrambled eggs, buttered bread and slices of cheese he'd made himself. He set everything on an old wooden table and pulled out a chair for the boy. Little Jack devoured the food as if he hadn't eaten in a week. Robert watched, worried about the child's condition. "Slow down, son. You'll make yourself sick eating so fast. Sorry, Mr. Johnson, I was just really hungry." "No need to apologize. Eat as much as you want. When was the last time you had a meal?" Little Jack stopped chewing and thought. "I think the day before yesterday. Or was it yesterday? I don't remember well." Robert's heart ached even more. How had such a small child survived alone for so long? "Little Jack, where are your parents? How did you end up here?" The boy lowered his head and clutched his doll. "My mom, she's not with me anymore, and Dad, I never really knew him." "Is there anyone else in your family? Grandparents? Uncles?" Little Jack's eyes lit up a little. "I have Grandma Margaret. She lives in a town with a big church in the square. I was trying to find her." Do you remember the name of that town? I don't, but Mom always said it was near a big ranch with lots of cattle. That's why I was walking, looking for ranches. Robert was amazed by the boy's determination, walking miles alone at just 6 years old, searching for his grandmother. I'll help you find your grandma, little Jack, but first, you need a bath and clean clothes. I have some that might fit you. Truthfully, they were clothes Mary had kept, dreaming of the day they'd have a child. Robert had never been able to part with them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, after his bath, little Jack looked like a different child. The clothes were a bit big, but they were clean and fresh. He had carefully tucked away his doll, as if it were his most precious possession. That doll is very special to you, isn't it? Mom made her for me when I was little. She said as long as I had Daisy with me, I'd always remember how much she loves me. Daisy is the doll's name? Yes. Because of the little lilac flower Mom sewed on her dress. Robert looked closer at the doll. It was made with so much love, every detail carefully stitched. You could tell it had been crafted by loving hands. Little Jack, can you remember anything else about your grandma? Her last name or any other details? She has white hair and makes the best cornbread, and she always sent letters to Mom, but Mom would get sad when she read them. Why did she get sad? I don't know. She never told me, but once I saw her cry after reading a letter from Grandma. That puzzled Robert. Why would a mother be sad over letters from her own mother? There must have been some family trouble. Come on, let me show you the ranch. Maybe walking around will jog your memory. They spent the whole morning exploring the property. Little Jack was fascinated by the animals. He showed no fear of the cows, pigs, or chickens. In fact, he seemed to have a natural connection with them. Have you taken care of animals before, little Jack? Mom always said I had a way with them. At the place we lived before, I looked after some stray kittens. Where did you live? In a small house, but it wasn't ours. The lady who let us stay there got mad and made us leave. The story unfolded bit by bit, and Robert realized this child had been through so much hardship. As he watched little Jack play with Duke in the yard, an old pickup truck came down the dirt road. It was Bill, his nearest neighbor, who lived about 6 miles away. Robert, who's this kid? Hey, Bill, it's a long story. The boy got lost and ended up here. Bill got out of the pickup truck and looked at little Jack curiously. Lost? Where did he come from? I'm still trying to figure that out. He says he was looking for his grandmother. Have you reported it to the authorities yet? Robert hesitated. He hadn't thought of that yet. He'd been so focused on taking care of the child that he hadn't considered the legal aspects of the situation. Not yet. I thought it'd be better to understand what happened first. Robert, you know you have to report it, right? A lost child. His parents must be desperate, searching for him. His parents aren't with him anymore, Bill. His mother seems to have passed away recently. Bill lowered his voice. What a tough situation, so what now? I'll take him to town, see if anyone recognizes him. If that doesn't work, then I'll go to the authorities. Want me to come with you? That'd be good. Thanks. In the town of Big Rock, they walked down the main streets with little Jack. They passed the central square, the church, the market, the pharmacy. No one recognized the boy. Mrs. Parker, who ran a grocery store on the main street, studied the child carefully. That little face looks familiar, but I can't quite place it. Do you know any Margaret who has a grandson around this age? Robert asked. Margaret? There are a few Margarets in town, but none that I know of with a grandson. They left the store without answers. Little Jack stayed quiet, holding Robert's hand tightly. The disappointment was clear in his small eyes. Don't worry, little Jack. We'll keep looking. But what if we don't find Grandma Margaret? The question caught Robert off guard. He'd been asking himself the same thing. We'll find her. And until then, you'll stay with me at the ranch. How's that? Little Jack's face lit up. Really, Mr. Robert? I can stay? Of course you can. Duke already likes you a lot. On the way back to the ranch, they stopped at a gas station on the outskirts of town. While Bill filled up the tank, Robert bought some clothes in little Jack's size and a few simple toys. The owner of the station, old Sam, had known Robert for years. That's a fine-looking boy, Robert. Family of yours? It's a long story, Sam. He showed up at my ranch and is looking for his grandmother. How old is he? 6. Sam looked at little Jack more closely. You know what? There's a woman who comes by sometimes, Mrs. Margaret. She lives in the next town over, St. Anthony's Grove. Always talks about a grandson she hasn't seen in a long time. Robert's heart raced. Do you know where I can find her? She usually comes here every Wednesday morning, picks up medicine from the station's pharmacy. If you come back tomorrow... Tomorrow's Wednesday, Robert exclaimed. That's right. She usually shows up between 9 and 10 in the morning. That night at the ranch, Robert could barely sleep. Little Jack had quickly adapted to life on the farm. He helped feed the chickens, watched the cows being milked, and even tried to help with the pigs, always with Duke by his side. During dinner, as they ate the soup Robert had made, little Jack asked a question that deeply moved the rancher. Mr. Robert, why do you live alone? Robert stopped eating and grew thoughtful. My wife passed away a few years ago, son. Since then, it's just been me and Duke here. Didn't you have any children? No. We tried, but it didn't happen. It must be really sad to be alone. It is, little Jack. Really sad. When I find Grandma Margaret, will you be alone again? The question surprised Robert. He'd gotten so used to the boy's presence that he hadn't even stopped to think about it. Well, if you find your grandmother, that's where you should be, right? With your family. But you could be my family too. Mama always said family isn't just about blood. He's the one who takes care of us with such kindness. Those words touched Robert deeply. It had been a long time since he'd felt that sense of being useful, of having someone who depended on him. The next morning they were at the gas station by 9 sharp. Little Jack was nervous, playing with his doll Daisy to distract himself. At 9:40, an elderly woman arrived, walking slowly. Her hair was completely white, tied in a simple bun, her face marked by time and her clothes humble but clean. Old Sam waved to Robert. There she is, Mrs. Margaret. Robert approached the woman carefully, with little Jack half hidden behind him. Excuse me, are you Mrs. Margaret? The woman eyed him suspiciously. I am. Why? My name is Robert Johnson. This boy here was looking for his grandmother named Margaret. We wanted to know if... Before he could finish, little Jack stepped out from behind him, and the woman got a clear look at his face. Mrs. Margaret turned pale. The bag she was carrying fell to the ground. Jack, little Jack, my grandson? Grandma, the boy shouted, running into her arms. Mrs. Margaret knelt and hugged her grandson so tightly they both began to cry. It was a touching scene that brought tears to Robert's eyes. My boy, my sweet grandson, how did you get here? Where's your mother? Little Jack pulled back slightly and lowered his head. Mom isn't with me anymore, Grandma. Mrs. Margaret's face twisted in pure pain. What are you saying, my child? She got really sick, and then the angels took her to live in heaven. Mrs. Margaret began to sob loudly, hugging her grandson again. My Jessica, my baby girl. Robert stepped closer slowly. Mrs. Margaret, would you like to talk somewhere more private? I can take you both to my ranch so we can talk better. The woman looked at him through her tears. You're the one who took care of my grandson? He showed up on my property early yesterday morning. I looked after him until we could find you. God bless you. God bless you so much. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. At the ranch, Mrs. Margaret shared her story while little Jack played with Duke in the yard. Her daughter Jessica had gotten pregnant very young and moved far away, cutting ties with the family out of pride. For years, Mrs. Margaret had tried to reconnect, sending letters that were rarely answered. She was stubborn, just like her late father. Once she made up her mind, nothing could change it. And little Jack's father? A boy she met in the city. He never took responsibility. My Jessica raised him alone, working in people's homes. How did you find out she had passed? A neighbor wrote me a letter, said she'd gotten very sick, and before she left, she asked someone to look after little Jack. But it seems there was no one she could trust. Robert watched little Jack playing, thinking about everything the boy had been through. Mrs. Margaret, are you able to care for him? The woman sighed deeply. Mr. Johnson, I'll be honest with you. My situation isn't easy. I live in a rented house, get by on a small pension, and on top of that I have health problems. The doctor said I need some tests, but I don't have the money. What kind of problems? My heart. Sometimes it hurts badly and I can't breathe. Just yesterday I nearly fainted at the pharmacy. Robert grew worried. Mrs. Margaret was visibly frail, and raising a child in her condition would be very hard. Listen, Mrs. Margaret, how about you stay at the ranch for a few days? We can take it slow, figure out the best solution for little Jack. I don't want to be any trouble. No trouble at all. I've got spare rooms here, and honestly, after so many years alone, it's been nice having company, Mrs. Margaret agreed to stay. Over the following week, Robert observed the interaction between grandmother and grandson. Their love for each other was clear, but it was also obvious that the woman's physical and financial condition made it hard for her to care for little Jack properly. The boy, meanwhile, was thriving on the ranch. He woke early with Robert, helped with lighter chores, played with Duke, and showed impressive intelligence for his age. One morning, while Mrs. Margaret was still asleep, little Jack approached Robert as he milked the cows. "Mr. Johnson, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. Is Grandma going to be able to take care of me?" The question was direct and honest, the way children ask things. "Why do you ask?" "'Cause last night I heard her crying, and she coughed a lot like Mama used to when she was sick." Robert stopped milking and looked at the boy. "You're worried about your grandma?" "I am, and I'm worried about me too. I don't want to be alone again." Robert's heart broke. That child had lost so much in such a short time. "Little Jack, I promise you won't be alone. No matter what, we'll figure it out." "You really promise?" "I do." That afternoon, Mrs. Margaret fell ill. She started having chest pains and couldn't catch her breath. Robert rushed her to the hospital in Big Rock, with little Jack in the back seat, clutching his doll Daisy and scared out of his mind. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed Mrs. Margaret had serious heart problems and needed urgent treatment. "Is she going to be okay, Doc?" little Jack asked, his eyes full of tears. "We'll do our best, little one, but she needs rest and expensive medication." Outside the room, the doctor spoke privately with Robert. "She can't afford the treatment, and even if she could, she's in no shape to care for a child. From what I understand, the boy has no one else." "No, just her. I'll have to notify Child Services. They'll decide what happens to him." Robert felt a tightness in his chest. The thought of little Jack being taken to a shelter or given to strangers made him sick. "Doc, what if I wanted to take care of him? Would that be possible? Are you any relation to him?" "No, but..." "Then it'd require an adoption or guardianship process. It's complicated, especially for a single man, but not impossible." That night, Mrs. Margaret called Robert in for a serious talk. Little Jack slept in a chair by the hospital bed, emotionally drained. "Mr. Johnson, I know I've got no right to ask this. Go ahead, Mrs. Margaret. Would you raise my grandson as your own?" The question left Robert speechless for a moment. "Mrs. Margaret, I've seen how close you've gotten this week. I've seen the care you have for him and the love he has for you. He told me he wants to learn to be a rancher like you. It'd be a big responsibility. I know. But I also know my grandson needs someone who can give him stability. And I've seen in your eyes the same desire to be a father that I saw in my late husband's." Robert looked at little Jack sleeping. The boy had completely changed his life in a week, bringing joy, purpose, and meaning to his days. "If it's God's will and the law allows it, I'd raise him with all the love in the world. Then I give my blessing. Tomorrow, I'll have someone draw up the papers. I want my grandson to have a better future than I can give him." The next day, a social worker named Susan came to the hospital to assess the situation. She was a middle-aged woman, serious and by the book. "Mr. Johnson, I understand your good intentions, but raising a child isn't just about affection. It requires stability, proper financial conditions, available time. I have all that. My ranch is doing well, I have plenty of time, and I truly want to take care of the boy. You're unmarried, correct? I'm a widower. Do you have experience with children? I don't have children of my own, but I've always gotten along well with kids, and little Jack is already settled into ranch life. The social worker asked many questions and took notes. She said she'd need to visit the ranch to assess the conditions and that the process could take months. In the meantime, the boy will go to a temporary foster home. "No!" shouted little Jack, who had been listening from the hallway. "I want to stay with Mr. Johnson." The child ran into Robert's arms, crying desperately. "Please, let me stay with him. He's good to me. Duke needs me, too." The scene moved even the stern social worker. "I'll see what I can do. Maybe temporary custody is possible while we evaluate the situation." 2 weeks later, with Mrs. Parker still hospitalized but improving thanks to the treatment Robert was paying for, they returned to the ranch with temporary custody approval. Little Jack was overjoyed. He ran to hug Duke, who wagged his tail non-stop and dashed off to show the cows he was back. "Mr. Johnson, the girls missed me," he yelled, referring to the dairy cows. Susan, the social worker, conducted a thorough inspection of the ranch. She checked the house, the safety of the property, the bedrooms, the kitchen, everything. "I'll be honest, Mr. Johnson, the material conditions here are excellent. The child is clearly well cared for and happy, but I still have reservations about a single man raising a child alone. What can I do to change your mind? Show me you have a support network, neighbors, friends, people who can help when needed. And most importantly, prove this isn't just a passing impulse." Robert dedicated himself to proving his commitment. He enrolled little Jack in the rural school at Big Rock, found a pediatrician in town to monitor the boy's health, and established a healthy, structured routine. The neighbors, who had initially found the situation odd, soon noticed the positive change in Robert's life. Bill visited regularly and often remarked how the rancher had become more lively and talkative. "That boy was a blessing in Robert's life," he'd say to anyone who'd listen. 2 months later, Mrs. Parker was discharged from the hospital. She was much better but still frail. Robert invited her to live on the ranch, in a small house he'd built for her on the property. "This way, little Jack can be near his grandmother, and you'll have help when you need it," he explained. The arrangement pleased everyone. Mrs. Parker could watch her grandson grow up without the full responsibility of raising him, and little Jack had both a father figure and his grandmother close by. Social worker Susan approved the setup, but warned that the legal process would still take time. There's a waiting list for adoptions, and even with all the goodwill, bureaucracy moves slowly. Months passed. Little Jack settled into school completely and made many friends. He was one of the top students in his class and always proudly shared stories about ranch life. At home, he helped Robert with the animals, learned to milk cows, tend to the chickens, and even drive the small tractor they used for light chores. "When I grow up, I'm going to be a rancher just like you, Mr. Johnson," he often said. One afternoon, while playing in the yard, little Jack asked a question Robert hadn't expected. "Mr. Johnson, can I call you Dad?" Robert was moved. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "Yes, I am. Grandma Margaret always said that a father isn't just the one who makes a child. A father is the one who cares, teaches, protects, and loves. And you do all that for me. Then you can call me Dad, son." From that day on, little Jack started calling Robert Johnson Dad at school, in town, and with the neighbors, and Robert referred to him as "my son" with immense pride. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Life on the ranch went smoothly until, a year after little Jack arrived, a woman showed up on the property. She was a distant cousin of Mrs. Margaret named Brenda, whom no one had seen in years. "Margaret, what a surprise to find you here," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Margaret tensed up. "Brenda, what are you doing here?" "Oh, I heard you were sick and came to check on you. And I also heard your grandson is living here with this man." Brenda looked around the ranch with obvious interest. "Wow, what a beautiful place. Must be worth a fortune." Robert didn't like the tone of the conversation one bit. "Can I help you with something? You must be that Robert, right? How generous of you to take care of the boy. But now that I'm here, I can take him with me." "What do you mean?" "Well, I'm his blood relative. I have more right than a stranger, don't I? Little Jack, who was playing nearby, overheard and came running. Grandma, who is this lady? This is your Aunt Brenda, my dear. Hi, sweetie. I came to take you to live with me in the city. I don't want to go. I want to stay here with my dad and my grandma. Brenda laughed unpleasantly. Your dad? This man isn't your father, child. He's just a lonely rancher playing house. Little Jack hid behind Robert, frightened by the woman's aggression. You need to leave my property, Robert said firmly. I'll leave, but I'll be back. And when I return, I'll have the right paperwork to take what's mine by law. After Brenda left, Mrs. Margaret told Robert about her cousin. She's always been selfish. Disappeared from the family when my husband was sick because she didn't want to help with expenses. Now that she sees little Jack is in a good situation, she shows up. Do you think she can really take the boy? I don't know, Robert. The law is complicated. Sometimes blood matters more than love. That night, Robert barely slept. The thought of losing little Jack terrified him. The boy had become the reason for his life, bringing meaning and joy to his days. The next morning, he decided to find a lawyer in Big Rock. Dr. Richard, an experienced family law attorney, listened carefully to the whole story. Mr. Johnson, you're in a complex situation. On one hand, there's a clear emotional bond between you and the child. On the other, blood relatives have legal priority. But the woman didn't even know the boy. She only showed up now that she saw he's doing well. I understand your frustration, but the law doesn't always consider emotions. We need to build a strong defense. Showing the child's best interest is to stay with you. The lawyer requested several documents: proof of Robert's income, school reports on little Jack's progress, medical records proving the boy was healthy and well cared for. We'll also need statements from neighbors, his teacher, the doctor, anyone who can vouch for the child's well-being in your care. Robert worked hard to gather all the paperwork. Bill was one of the first to sign a detailed statement about the positive change he'd seen in both Robert and little Jack. The school teacher, Mrs. Catherine, also made sure to write an emotional account about the boy. Jack is one of the most well-balanced and happy children I've ever had in my class. He speaks of his adoptive father with love and admiration, showing he has a structured and healthy family life. Rarely have I seen a child so emotionally secure. The pediatrician who monitored little Jack also provided a detailed medical report, confirming the child was in good health and well-nourished. 2 weeks later, Brenda returned, accompanied by a lawyer and a court order. I've come to take my great-nephew to his proper home, she said with an air of victory. The boy isn't going anywhere without a final court decision, replied Robert, showing the papers his lawyer had prepared. Brenda's lawyer, a nervous and poorly dressed man, tried to intimidate Robert. Sir, the child has blood relatives. You have no rights over him. I do. I have temporary custody granted by the court, and an adoption process is underway. The argument dragged on for hours, with little Jack hiding inside the house, terrified. Duke wouldn't stop growling at the visitors, sensing the tension in the air. Finally, after much discussion and phone consultations, it was decided the matter would be settled in court, with a hearing scheduled for the following week. Enjoy these last days with the boy, Brenda said as she left. Soon he'll be in a real home, with a real family. The words cut Robert deeply. That night he spoke honestly with little Jack. Son, you know you might have to go live with your aunt, right? I don't want to go, Dad. I want to stay here with you and Grandma Margaret. I want you to stay too, but sometimes life doesn't give us the choices we want. Promise you'll fight for me to stay? I promise I'll do everything in my power. The week leading up to the hearing was the hardest of Robert's life since his wife's passing. He tried to keep things normal to avoid upsetting little Jack further, but inside he was desperate. Mrs. Margaret was also deeply shaken. The thought of her grandson being raised by Brenda, whom she knew to be a selfish and cold person, made her sick with worry. Robert, you need to know something, she said one morning. Brenda doesn't want little Jack out of love. She found out that children under guardianship qualify for government benefits. That's all she's after. Do you have proof of that? I have a mutual cousin with her. She told me Brenda's been asking about aid and benefits for those who care for orphan children. This information was crucial. Robert's lawyer used his contacts to investigate Brenda's financial situation and history. They discovered she had previously tried to gain custody of other family children, always motivated by financial gain. On the day of the hearing, the Big Rock courthouse was packed. Besides Robert, little Jack, Mrs. Margaret, and Brenda, many community members had come to support the rancher. The judge, Charles Henry, was known for his seriousness and impartiality. He first heard the arguments from Brenda's lawyer. "Your Honor, my client is the child's blood relative and has the legal right to raise him. It's not right for a stranger to have custody when family is available." Then, Robert's lawyer presented his defense. "Your Honor, what's at stake here isn't just the legal matter, but the child's best interest. We have ample evidence that Jack is being exceptionally well cared for, developing properly, and has deep emotional bonds with the petitioner." The judge asked to speak directly with little Jack. "Jack, come up to my desk. I want to talk to you." Now 8 years old, little Jack approached with some nervousness, but spoke clearly and with conviction. "Do you want me to go live with Aunt Brenda?" "I want to know how you feel about it, son." "I don't want to go, Your Honor. She doesn't even know me. She just showed up now and spoke badly about my dad in front of everyone." "When you say my dad, are you referring to Mr. Robert?" "Yes, sir. He's my dad. Not by blood, but in my heart. He taught me to read better, teaches me about animals, plays with me, takes me to the doctor when I'm sick. He does everything a dad does." "And if I decide you have to live with your aunt?" "I'll be very sad. But I know you want what's best for me, so I'll accept it." The maturity of his answer impressed the judge and the entire room. "What do you like most about the ranch?" "I like taking care of the animals with my dad. I like playing with Duke. I like when Grandma Margaret makes cornbread. I like waking up early and seeing the sun rise over the pasture. I like everything." "Thank you, Jack. You may return to your seat." The judge then called Brenda. "Mrs. Brenda, why do you want custody of the child?" "Well, he's my relative. It's my duty to take care of him." "Do you have children?" "No, but do you have experience with children?" "Not much, but I can learn." "What is your financial situation?" "I'm unemployed at the moment, but I plan to look for work." "And where would the child live?" "With me in a small apartment I rent in town." "Do you know the child's likes, his fears, his joys?" Brenda hesitated. "Well, we'll get to know each other, right?" The contrast between Brenda's answers and the deep understanding Robert showed about little Jack became increasingly clear. When the judge asked Robert about the child's routine, he knew everything. That little Jack liked chocolate milk for breakfast, was afraid of thunder, his favorite subject in school was math, and that he played veterinarian with the ranch animals. "Mr. Robert, why do you want to adopt this child?" "Because he brought light into my life, Your Honor. After my wife passed, I'd lost the will to live fully. Little Jack gave me back my joy, gave me purpose, and more than that, I love him as if he were my own flesh and blood." "Are you able to provide him with a proper education?" "Yes. He's already enrolled in a good school, has regular medical checkups, and I'm saving money for when he wants to go to college. And if he chooses a path different from farming, I'll support him in any honest choice that makes him happy." The judge also heard from Mrs. Parker, who was firm in her testimony. "Your Honor, I entrusted my grandson to Mr. Roberts' care because I saw in him a good and loving man. My grandson is happy, healthy, and well-raised. I couldn't ask for more." "And what about your relative, Mrs. Brenda?" "With all due respect, Your Honor, she never showed interest in the child before. She only appeared now that she sees he's in a good situation." After hearing all testimonies and reviewing the documents, the judge left to deliberate. 40 minutes felt like 40 hours to Robert. When he returned, Judge Charles Henry was solemn. "This is a difficult decision, involving not just legal matters, but above all the well-being of a child. After reviewing all evidence, considering the testimonies, documentation, and, most importantly, the child's best interest, we rule that full custody of Jack will be granted to Mr. Robert Johnson, with authorization to begin the adoption process." The room erupted in applause. Little Jack ran into Robert's arms, crying with joy. Mrs. Parker wept alongside them, thanking God. Brenda left the courtroom angry, muttering about appeals and injustice. Over these past 2 years, you have proven yourself to be a responsible, loving, and devoted father. The child is clearly well-adjusted and happy. This is a family built by love, not by blood, but no less legitimate for it, concluded the judge. Outside the courthouse, Robert was greeted by dozens of neighbors and friends who had come to support him. The entire community had rallied to keep little Jack at the ranch. "Dad, can I call you Dad forever now?" asked little Jack. "Yes, son, forever." Bill approached with tears in his eyes. "Robert, I've never seen you so happy, not even in the days with Mary. It's because now I know God gave me a second chance to be a father, and I won't waste it." The adoption process took another 6 months to finalize. During that time, life at the ranch became even more structured. Robert made sure everything was official. He changed the boy's name to Jack Johnson, arranged new documents, and opened a savings account for his son's education. Little Jack continued to thrive. At school, he was one of the top students and a leader among his peers. At home, he became Robert's right-hand man, helping with all the ranch chores. Duke, the dog who had found the child on that cold dawn, became inseparable from little Jack. The two ran through the pastures, played by the creek that ran through the property, and slept together in the boys' room. Mrs. Margaret settled in the small house Robert built for her, fully recovered her health, and became the most loving and present grandmother little Jack could have asked for. Every Sunday she baked her famous cornbread cake, and the afternoons were filled with stories about the family and the late Jessica. "Your mother would be so proud to see the good man you're becoming," she always told her grandson. A year after the adoption was finalized, Robert made a decision that surprised everyone. He decided to expand the ranch and start a social project to take in other vulnerable children. "Not for adoption," he explained to little Jack, "but so they can spend time here, learn about farming, connect with nature, and eat well." "That's an amazing idea, Dad. Can I help take care of the other kids?" "Of course you can. You'll be my main assistant." The project, which they named Hope Ranch, started small, hosting children from local orphanages on weekends. Little Jack turned out to be an excellent mentor, teaching visitors how to care for the animals, plant crops, and respect nature. "He has a natural gift with people," remarked the coordinator of the orphanage that sent the most children. "Must take after his father." Robert smiled every time he heard such comments. The word father, which had taken him so long to hear, now felt like a natural part of his identity. One Sunday afternoon, 3 years after that life-changing dawn, Robert sat on the porch, watching little Jack play with a group of visiting children and Duke. The sunset painted the sky gold, and the joyful sounds of laughter echoed across the fields. Mrs. Margaret came over and sat beside him. "You saved my grandson, Robert." "Truth is, Mrs. Margaret, I think he's the one who saved me." "How so?" "I was becoming a bitter, lonely man with no purpose. Little Jack gave me back my will to live, to dream, to build something bigger than myself. And now look at this ranch, full of life, full of joy. Who'd have thought a dog's bark in the middle of the night would change so much, huh?" Just then, little Jack came running up. "Dad, come see something." "What is it, son?" "Duke found a cat in the barn. She has kittens." Robert and Mrs. Margaret exchanged a glance and laughed. "It seems Duke has a special talent for finding those who need help," she said. "Dad, can we keep them, please?" "Of course we can, little Jack. This ranch is meant to welcome those in need." As they walked toward the barn, Robert reflected on how his life had completely changed. From a lonely man with no prospects, he had become a father, a mentor, and the founder of a project that had already impacted the lives of dozens of children. The barn, which 3 years earlier had been the stage for the encounter that changed everything, now housed a new family in need of care. It was as if life had a special way of renewing itself in that place. "Dad, do you think Mom up in heaven is happy with our family?" The question took Robert by surprise. Little Jack rarely spoke about Jessica, though he always remembered her fondly. "I'm sure she is, son. Your mother wanted you to be happy, and you are a very happy child. And I want to be a rancher like you when I grow up. I want to help other kids too. You'll be an even better rancher than me, little Jack, because you already have something it took me years to learn." "What's that?" That family doesn't have to come from blood. Sometimes it comes from the heart. That night, after all the visiting children had returned to the orphanages, after Mrs. Parker had retired to her little house, after the animals were all fed and safe, Robert and little Jack sat on the porch to talk, as they did every night. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, son." "That night I slept in the barn. I was really scared. But when I woke up and saw you there, I felt like I was home." "Why?" "Because you looked at me with kindness, not pity. And because Duke was protecting me, like he already knew I was staying." Robert hugged his son, moved by the simplicity and depth of the child's words. "You know you've made me very happy, right, little Jack?" "You've made me happy too, Dad. Really happy." Duke approached and lay at their feet as he always did. The dog who had once saved a lost child now watched over an entire family. "Dad, when I grow up and have my own kids, I'll tell them the story of how you found me." "And what will you tell them?" "I'll tell them that sometimes God uses a dog to change people's lives, and that a real family is one where people choose to love each other." The future lay before them, full of possibilities. Hope Ranch would keep growing, welcoming more children, planting more dreams. Little Jack would grow into a good man, carrying the values Robert had taught him, and Mrs. Parker would have the joy of watching her grandson grow up surrounded by love and opportunity. But in that moment, sitting on the porch under the starry Montana sky, with Duke at their feet and the scent of the countryside in the air, they were simply a family. A family born from a bark in the night, nurtured by love and strengthened through hardship. The once silent ranch now echoed with laughter, conversation, and the joyful noise of life. The man who once lived in isolation was now a father, mentor, and role model for many children. And the boy who had once been lost now had a home, a family, and a bright future ahead. Duke, the silent hero of this whole story, continued his nightly watch, always alert to the sounds of the ranch. Who knew how many more lives he would help transform? Who knew how many more families would be born from his intuition and loyalty? What mattered was that on that night, as on every night since little Jack had arrived, Hope Ranch slept in peace, knowing love had won once again. The end. Now tell me, what did you think of this heartwarming story? Do you believe love can truly create bonds stronger than blood? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.